I have been in the process of exploring how Dharma and nonviolent communication can kind of work together with looking at some of the difficulties and some of the conflicts in the world as sort of powerful tools to help us, at least for myself, when I get really agitated and in somewhat of a personal distress when I'm looking at what's going on in the world. And that I wanted to, I had put out this little experiment that I was going to look at some of the conflicts in the world at this moment and see if I could use some of the NVC language and training and some of the Dharma to try to imagine what the possible feelings and needs on that deep wish to be happy and not suffer, what could possibly be perhaps arising in all of these groups right now in the world that are struggling and having so much harm and so much suffering. And that one of the qualities of the self-centered thought is that underlying any conflict, rather it be in a small community, rather it be if it's in a family, if it's in a local community, a neighborhood, a city, a town, a country, or across the world amongst nations, that the self-centered thought is the underlying cause for a lot of the conflict. Because due to the self-grasping ignorance that's sort of driving it, there's this right is might sort of thinking, and that the way that I think and how I want it to go and how you're wrong, it takes sometimes just general differences of values and politics and religion and economics, and it takes them and it twists them and exaggerates them so that the human beings, we get this skewed reality of what's actually going on, not only in our own minds, but in the minds of other people. And so this right is might becomes the major cause of all this misguided thinking, becomes the major cause for all the conflict in the world. So to kind of put that as the parameters of exploring what the feelings and needs could be underneath this wild misguided thinking. So what I ended up doing is that I went online and I went on and did a search engine of the list of all the world conflicts right now. And my whole talk kind of had to shift after I saw this list. There are 44 major wars going on our planet right now. And the way that they determine that, the UN determines that if there are more than 1,000 deaths per year. So anything less than that is considered to be a minor conflict. So right now we've got 44 major wars going on in this planet. We have some. The one that has been in Burma started in 1948. 65 years. Over 700,000 people have died. The war in Afghanistan, which started in 1978, the one that we are now withdrawing, starting, what was that, 35 years ago? 3 million people have died. In Somalia, civil war since 1991, 400,000 people have died. North and South Korea, 1949, 4,770,000 people. The Kurds and the Turks have been fighting since 1984 with over 100,000 lives lost. The insurgency in Kashmir since 1989, 68,000. There are 44 of them. Those are the ones that have the most casualties, but 1,000 people or more. And it's still going on, the fatalities. So when I saw that, it's the self-centered thought in the minds of sentient beings who want more than anything to be happy and not suffer. The self-centered thought has got them hostage and is spinning out of control. Or as Marshall says, this tragic playing out of unmet needs. I mean, when you look at it, that this way of thinking, just thoughts, are driving these deaths in this world. And when I try to go to the feelings and needs of them, I found that I had an obstacle and I had a jackal inside of me so disturbed because it was, in its own way, having some feelings not heard and some needs unmet. So before I could even look at the feelings and needs of the people in these conflicts and wars in the world, I had to check in and find out what was getting in the way of me being able to look at that and to have some empathy, have some compassion. So the first thing, so this is how it went. There were 3 different levels of my feelings and needs I want to share with you. The first one that became very apparent when I looked at this list is that I felt exasperated and impatient about the state of the world because I needed a willingness and an honesty from the parties involved to admit that what they were doing wasn't working. This incredible frustration to just stop. Okay, so that was my first feelings and needs. That's where the jackal was. Just upset, disturbed, over the top, angry, and upset. Underneath that was a feeling of clarity because I know that what I'm asking them to do is very difficult. And coming from my own experience, to give up one's own strategy and to start over looking at things very differently, to step out of one's patterns, one's habits, one's strategy, to walk away from the self-centered thought is nearly impossible. So even though I had all that anger up there and the need up there, there was a clarity that what I was asking for was almost impossible. Then underneath that, I got in touch with a sense of tender vulnerability that what happens on the other side of the world affects us all, consciously or unconsciously. And that we can practice for them, we can pray for them, we can dedicate for them, we can petition for them, we can send humanitarian help, but we can't help them. That they have to figure this out with each other and want to change and work. So there was this vulnerability of needing connection, of needing resolution, and knowing that on some level we have our hands tied. And we know that no matter how much we're suffering and how much advice, support, guidance from teachers and friends, if we can't make that commitment to change and to do it differently and to step back, it doesn't go in, it doesn't go, it doesn't work. Then the fourth one, even under that, was that I wanted to bring more and more of the Dharma in, was to call to mind the practice of seeing all beings as having been our mothers and fathers. And right now, they are killing each other. Confused as to how to create the causes for happiness, and instead creating the very causes that will continue the misery, not just in this life, but in future lives. And that, for me, went 1 level, 2 level, 3 levels, right down into the very core of my heart, realizing that each one of these Somalians and North Koreans and South Koreans and Mexicans, I mean, there's 85,000 people who died in just the Mexican drug wars alone, is that they're wanting to be happy and avoid suffering. And due to the self-centered thought and the self-grasping ignorance, just like mine, this is the confused way in which they're going about it. And that is tragic. So then after I got underneath all of that, I was able then to go to the feelings of what could possibly be going on in their minds right now. And there's a huge list, depending on who's winning, who's losing, who you are, where you are. Some of the feelings: dread, suspicious, incensed, alienated, numb, weary, agony, proud, greed, terror. Just some of the feelings that could be going on in the minds of those that are in these conflicts right now. And the needs, perhaps: safety, respect, stability, peace, freedom, to be heard, to be understood, to matter, choice. But due to the self-centered thought that's running out of control, propelled by the self-grasping ignorance, that doesn't care about anyone but itself, not even the sentient being in whose mind it is arising. That the feelings cannot be acknowledged and the needs can't be met on any side. And by going through this level of getting in touch with my own feelings and needs and turning my attention, there was a need for me to let go of my own enemy images, because I have some very specific feelings about some of these conflicts in the world and who I think is right, who I think should go to jail, who boycotts, and the U.S.'s involvement with arms and everything. I mean, there's a lot of enemy images that I also have to acknowledge within my own mind that don't help the situation. The last thing is that when we learn how to work with our own self-centered thought and our own apathy, our own anger, our own outrage, we can slowly get in touch with our compassion in wanting. I mean, the feeling that I came to after going through all of these levels was this amazing to know suffering in my own way and to wish for all of them as best as they could to be free of the suffering that they had and the causes and conditions that were bringing that about. I mean, I really got in touch with them being my mothers and fathers in previous lives, will be my mothers and fathers in future lives. And right now I'm in a country, in a situation where I'm not at war. And to have this kind of compassion of just as a child to a parent and a parent to a child is to wish that they not suffer and that they have happiness and the causes for happiness. And that they have equality, that they have understanding, that they have however that happiness can manifest without someone else having to sacrifice anything for them to have that. And so I mean, I was able to pull myself out of the anger and the aggravation and the exasperation, the personal distress, and to be able to connect with my understanding of who I am in relationship to all of these suffering human beings right now. And to be able to just continue my practice to develop my understanding of compassion, that this is ignorance manifesting in the minds of sentient beings. And that by me being able to develop my own wisdom and compassion to its greatest capacity, I would be able to help and guide in ways that I can only imagine now. So it got me out of my personal distress. It got me to feel the connection the need for connection that I needed to have with the rest of the world. Because sometimes it gets to be so much that I just want to close my eyes and get almost kind of this numbness, this kind of indifference that says what to do. But that's not the place to go if you want to become a Buddha and you want to be able to benefit. You've got to be able to look at that straight on and use it for practice. So may all these 23 million people who have died since 1949, may they have all the causes and conditions to be free of suffering, and may they have all the causes and conditions to have happiness. Not only worldly happiness here on this planet, but also the ultimate happiness of awakening. So anyway, just let's keep all the world's conflicts in mind and to wish them well. And to practice with our own anger, our own hostility, our own prejudices, and our own biases. Because it does matter how we practice, how we work, how we walk in the world from our own side. And although we can't help them directly, in the long term we will be able to. So, thank you.